If you are pregnant, listen up because there is an upcoming live pregnancy workshop available to help you prepare your body and pelvic floor for birth and beyond. We discuss ways to reduce risk of perineal tears and episiotomy. We learn how to reduce risk of pelvic floor trauma and, importantly, ways to support a strong postnatal recovery. This free workshop called Birth Strong is physio-created and designed to help you feel more confident and empowered about your upcoming childbirth experience. Head to fitnessedmama.com/pregnancy workshop and the link is in the show notes. Once more, that's www.fitnessedmama.com/pregnancy workshop, all one word. Can't wait to see you there. If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of 3. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram @fitnessedmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello, welcome to the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Today I'm chatting with the lovely Simone Holtznagel about her birth story. This was a really fun chat. I know you're all going to love it. So if you don't know Simone, she is one of Australia's media personalities. She's been on Australia's Next Top Model and also Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Oh, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And Simone has a little baby girl called Gia who is 6 weeks old. So in today's episode, Simone chats about her birth preparation or her pregnancy journey, but her birth preparation, and she describes what she would have done differently with her birth preparation, and hint, it has to do with her pelvic floor, which was music to my ears as a pelvic floor physiotherapist. She discusses her epidural and her vaginal birth, and then she talks us through making pills and a smoothie out of her placenta. So this chat was fun. Definitely, there were a lot of laughs in it. She's a really laid back person. And yeah, as I said, it was an absolute pleasure to chat with her. As I mentioned in the episode, she was discussing, and a bit of a spoiler here, but she was discussing how she wished she'd prepared her pelvic floor for birth slightly differently. And I want to just let you know, before we dive into this episode, that there is a free pregnancy workshop where I talk to you about 3 important ways to prepare your pelvic floor for birth. So we talk through pelvic floor, perineal massage, recovery techniques. It's totally free. If you're interested, just head to fitnessedmama.com/free and the links are in the show notes. Otherwise, let's dive straight into this episode today. Simone, thank you so much for joining me on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. We're going to have a chat all about your pregnancy journey, how you prepared your body for birth and yourself for birth, and a little bit about your recovery and motherhood journey so far too. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat to you about all things baby.
Yes, you mentioned it's your first ever interview about your bubs, so very honoured. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's start at the start. When did you find out you're pregnant?
I found out I was pregnant the day I came home from my 30th birthday trip to the Maldives. So we weren't actively not trying to have a baby. It was just kind of like, well, if it happens, it happens. And we were away, for my 30th, and I was having the time of my life, and like literally the best holiday I've ever had. I'm so happy that was like my last, like, well, not my last holiday, but you know what I mean, like last child-free pre-pregnancy holiday. And it's funny, like looking back on the way over, I was like, gosh, I feel a bit sick. I was sick in the lounge at our stopover in Singapore. I was like, I just threw up. And I was like, whatever, maybe I just like ate something funny or had too much to drink on the plane. And then had the holiday. And when we're coming home, I was like, oh gosh, I don't feel well. And we're waiting for our bags. And my partner, Jono, was like, you always say this at this time, like while we're waiting for our bags, like anytime we come back from the airport, you always say you feel sick here. And I'm like, but I do. And I was like, whatever, I probably just haven't eaten enough. Like we've just been on this big flight. And then went home, and all day I was like, oh, I just don't feel well. And then I just had a pregnancy test at home, and I did it, and I was like, surprise.
So was it a surprise?
It was a surprise. Like it was a happy surprise, but it was like, well, like expected also.
So how many weeks were you by the time you found out?
I think I was only like 3 weeks pregnant when I found out, like 3 or 4, like really, really early. Which once I found out, I was like, okay, like what now? Like, what do I do? And I found it like interesting, just the way kind of doctors treat you that early. Like they don't want you to get your hopes up. But it's like, I don't want to put that negative energy out there. Like when I did go to the doctors and I was like, oh, I've had a positive pregnancy test, blah, blah. And they're like, well, just wait. And I'm like, why are you being like that? Like, I don't want I understand that that's your job and that not all pregnancies, like, you know, in those first very, very early weeks, like, there's a lot of like people who do like lose their pregnancy, which I understand that. But I was like, can you guys just be a bit more happy and excited?
Yeah, that's interesting. That was one of your first, I guess.
I was just like, guys, cheer up. Like, this is a good thing. But I guess they're just trying to not be like, oh my God, in case something does happen.
So what did they say to you? Did they say, wait and come back and we'll test again, or?
They were just kind of like, well, yeah, it's positive pregnancy test. There's nothing we can really do. So you need to wait like until, I can't remember how many weeks, but they were like, you just need to kind of wait and see if it lasts and then come back. And I was like, Jesus, okay. So those first few weeks I was like I'm already a pretty anxious, like warrior person. And so every little thing I was like, oh my God, like, and I was really nervous that something was going to happen. And my mum and dad were going away on a holiday to Europe, and I went down. I'd told my mum really early because we're really close. And she bought me like little onesies and stuff. And I like burst into tears when she gave them to me because I was like, I don't want to get too excited in case something happens. And during those first few weeks, I did have like really, really slight spotting. So I was like, oh my God, like I was just so nervous until I was nervous the whole time, really. But like those first few weeks, I was just like a bit of a mess because every like headache, pain, slight nauseous feeling, I was like, oh my God, like what's happening? Is this normal?
And how did your partner Jono respond to the news?
We were both like excited, and then the day we'd found out, and then we're both excited, and then 2 days later we were with his family having lunch, and his brother and sister-in-law were like, surprise, we're pregnant. And we hadn't told them or anything yet, and because it was still like super, super early. So we were like, cool, congratulations. Like, I don't think we had like the big not because we weren't excited, but because we were like, our babies are going to be born very close to each other, which they were. And I've got two sisters. My older sister, the day that we arrived in the Maldives, also told me that she was pregnant. So it's like my older sister was pregnant, Jono's brother and his partner were pregnant, and then we were pregnant as well. So it was all like, it was really exciting.
Amazing. So 3 cousins born within, a month or so?
Weeks. Yeah. Yeah. My older sister's third baby, she was born February 11th. And then Jono's brother, they had their baby on the 10th of March, and then Gia was born the 31st. And so, yeah, she's got a little boy and girl cousin.
Oh, the best. Are they all close by to you?
They're both, like, Rosie is an hour away and Jono's brother is about an hour away. So, like, we're kind of right in the middle, but
that's so lucky for them. Same thing with my children, and I keep telling them how lucky they are to have cousins the same age. I remember I grew up with no cousins, so I just think it's the best thing in the world having cousins like same age.
I know, it's so cute. My mum and dad are like, so we've already got, like, my older sister's got 2 other kids and they're the cutest, and we're like so close and obsessed with them. So they've gone from having 2 grandkids to having 4 within a few weeks. So they're loving it.
Okay, so let's keep traveling through the pregnancy. You find out you're pregnant, you try not to get your hopes up. I assume you go back to the doctor and then...
Yeah, so it was just like, okay, like I found out, I'm like, okay, what now? Like my doctor, like I love her, she's great. But I just kind of felt like there's a lot of, like, in those in-between weeks, like before the, like, structural scans and, like, NIPT tests and all that you just kind of, like, in this weird limbo of, like, what am I doing? Like, I feel like that kind of part, I get that it is a waiting game, but, like, for me, I was just like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Is there other things that I should be doing right now in terms of, like, I don't know, appointments or whatever? So I was reading everything and, like, looking at every app, and, like, my poor sister, my older sister, my best friend, everything. I was like, is this normal? Is this normal? They were like, yes, stop worrying. Yes, that's normal. Yes, that's normal. But I was pretty lucky that I wasn't that sick. I didn't suffer really terrible morning sickness. I was just so tired and, like, really bad headaches. But other than that, like, it was pretty okay. And I was intending, like, my partner owns a gym and, like, I work out every day. And I was like, yeah, I'll keep working out while, like, the whole time that I'm pregnant. And I went and did one workout and I had the tiniest bit of spotting, and I was like, I'm never working out again until I have the baby, which is exactly what I did. I don't know how I would have done it anyway, because I'm tired at the best of times. But then being pregnant, I was like, oh my God, this is like another level of exhaustion for me.
So, because this is totally up my alley and everything I talk about and do as a physio for women during pregnancy and postpartum. So did you stop working because of the fear of miscarriage, or working out? Did you stop because of the fear of miscarriage, or did you stop because you were feeling so fatigued?
A bit of both. After we got back from the Maldives and I'd found out that I was pregnant, I, like, went to the gym and was with my trainer, and I was like, oh, I haven't worked out for, like, 3 weeks properly, so let's just, like, take it easy. So I wasn't doing anything, like, super crazy. And then, I had a bit of spotting, and I was just like, I'm not going to, I know it's, like, safe to work out during pregnancy, but just for, like, me and my anxiety, I was like, I'm not doing that. I think I did about 15 weeks, I did, like, 2 weeks of Pilates, and that was it. But I was just so tired. Like, I could not, I'm already, like, a low iron girly at the best of times. So, I was just, like, totally, completely wiped out the majority of my pregnancy.
Yeah, right. And were you taking iron supplements? And
I was taking iron supplements, but I just feel like they never, ever work for me. I'm like, is this even doing anything? And then I've had iron infusions before, but last time I had an iron infusion was just before I went to South Africa to do I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And my doctor, I had to do a whole physical, and my iron was, like, incredibly low, to the point that my doctor was like worried that they weren't going to let me go and do the show because you eat so little food in that camp, that me not like having a proper diet, that he was worried that that they'd say no.
I know this podcast isn't about like all these amazing things you've done in the past, and it's about your pregnancy journey and birth. But I just have to, what do you mean that you didn't get enough food in the camp?
Oh, they don't, you like have like rations. So all you eat is like beans and porridge. So yeah.
But wasn't
and then
the
like
rations and
when you
wasn't it enough?
No, not really, because they don't. No, because they don't give you a lot of food, because they like people to get like hungry and angry, and then people like get snappy with each other, and then you do the trials and win the stars and you get like extra food for dinner. But every day you eat porridge for breakfast, which is oats and water, and then beans for lunch. So yeah.
How did you find it?
I loved it. Not of the food aspect, I just had the best time. It was like, because everything was taken care of. I was just in this like little camp in South Africa that was like armed guards around. No one can get in, no one can get out. Felt really safe. And then, everything was taken care of. I knew my food was going to show up. Didn't have to pay any bills. Didn't have a phone. Didn't have to worry about the outside world. It was great.
I didn't have to worry about the outside world, except for the fact that it's been recorded the whole
in
time.
South Africa. But so before I went and did that, I had an iron infusion, and I guess it was because I had heaps of vaccinations like before going to South Africa, and I just had the worst reaction to the iron infusion. Like my bones felt like they were burning from like my joints felt like they were on fire. I couldn't get out of bed for about 5 days. I was just so faint. So I was like, I'm not doing that while I'm pregnant, because it was suggested. But yeah, I find I take iron supplements and they just don't do anything.
Yeah, okay. Right, so you're feeling pretty low energy. You're trying to conserve your energy throughout pregnancy. At what stage did you start to think, oh my gosh, I'm about to have a baby, like I need to perhaps, well, did you prepare for birth? How did you prepare for birth?
I prepared for birth, I didn't do anything really too physical, but I read everything, because I was just like, okay, the saying knowledge is power. So I was like, if I just like consume as much information on kind of every aspect of like every kind of possibility, then, there's like, I felt like that was what was going to help me the most. I did a birthing class with like a natal birthing class, and I read lots of books, listened to lots of podcasts, ate lots of dates, and did like all the kind of right exercises. In hindsight, my biggest piece of advice for someone who's about to give birth would be go to a women's physio and learn how to push properly, because like I thought I knew, but it's like you just don't. Like I had no idea. So that is like, if I could change anything, I wouldn't even bother going to like a birthing class, because it's like you don't really learn that much about actual birth. It's more before and after. Like the lead up to being in labour, not so much anything about the actual delivery and then recovery stuff. So I'm like, that is the one thing I would change.
Oh, Simone, you're like just I feel like singing hallelujah here. Like this. So ladies, if you're listening, I've got a preparing for birth free class where we discuss how to prepare your pelvic floor for birth. We discuss the impact of the pelvic floor and how to help with that pelvic floor recovery, and how pelvic floor is involved in birth, because and it's everything we cover inside Fit Nest Mama too. So check out that free resource I will link. But 100% agree. During pregnancy, pelvic floor muscles are hidden, right? We don't know if we've got overactive pelvic floor, weak pelvic floor. Like, how do you know how to push? And
I know. And I've in the past, I don't know, have you heard of that chair called Emceller that like tightens your pelvic floor? I'd done a couple of sessions of that, loved it, thought it was great, and like really saw benefits from it. Not that I had like a bad pelvic floor, but
did you do this pre-pregnancy?
Yeah, like a year before I was even pregnant. And I thought like it made like for me, I'm like sex and everything felt better. Not that it felt bad, but it was just like better. And then I noticed like I drink heaps of water. I'd usually get up at least once in the night to pee. And I noticed that stopped once I stopped doing the chair, which I do plan on doing it a few sessions post baby. Afterwards I was like, maybe was my pelvic floor too tight? I don't know.
So anyone listening, a chair, there's a few different chairs going around that help with pelvic floor strength. Research is a bit iffy. I think they do have their place, but I would never encourage anyone. Generally, if women haven't had any babies yet, very rarely do you get weak pelvic floor. Generally, women have more of an issue with overactive pelvic floor. Generally speaking, like if there's leaking, it's probably due to overactive pelvic floor. So the chair, I think, does hold a place, but I would only reserve it or recommend it for women who have difficulty even activating their pelvic floor, like getting any muscle activation at all. So it's in a very small percentage of population, because if we can do the exercise ourselves, then I would recommend that. And often it doesn't look at quality of the exercise lift as well. It's more of a global, it gets your glutes contracting. It's not. Yeah. So look, I think it has its place, but the majority of women, I'd recommend having a women's health physio assessment beforehand. Did you do that?
I didn't, but I've got an amazing women's health physio now, which I'm going to see her in a few weeks, just like now that I'm past the 6-week mark. Yeah, I was doing like Kegels and everything while I was pregnant, and then closer to the end, I bought that like weird tentacle thing to do like the perineal massage, because I was like terrified of having either an episiotomy or any sort of tear. I was just like, oh my God, that sounds horrific. And I would like to avoid that at all costs, which I did.
Amazing. And there's some really great research about perineal massage. What's the tentacle thing you're talking about?
It's like, it basically looks like a vibrator, but it was just like, it's kind of in the shape of like an S, or like, I don't know. It's just so like, I've got long nails. Like, it's just so I can kind of get in there a bit
without
like easier, I guess. Yeah. And it kind of made me feel like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Cause like, otherwise I'm like, is this right?
Yeah.
Am I doing this right? I don't know.
Yeah. So ladies, I teach this. If you're unsure, check out Instagram, check out my program. But I'm going to look up that tentacle. The research,
It's called Perimum.
Perimum. Okay. I'm going to look it up. Look, the research, I think the majority of women are fine with fingers, but I can imagine for some, like I can totally imagine if you've got long nails, wouldn't want to get in there. Some women have difficulty reaching, and they might not want their partner to do it. So, yeah, I can totally see how something like that would have a role. But I'm definitely...
It was just more like if I feel like for me, if I have like in the gym, like if I'm at the gym and there's equipment, I'm going to use it. If it's just like, I'll go for a walk, I'm like, no.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it now.
Like I'm a props girly.
I think it's reserved for women who probably like a prop like yourself, or those that have difficulty reaching.
Yeah. I just kept it in the shower and just did it a few times a week.
But it might be worth it.
When it was...
sorry, go.
No, when it was like up to like the weeks that you should recommended that you start doing that. Yeah. So I just found it was easier if I just had it in the shower and just did it then.
And you did it in standing, did you?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was way easier because I was like, I don't know. It's like, seems weird. Like I was just like, I'll do it in the shower. It's easier.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, got totally sidetracked there. So we're talking
I can't believe you haven't heard of it.
Yeah. Well, no, I can't believe either. Like I'm usually pretty all over this. If anyone else send me a message on Instagram. If you've used the Perimum, I'd love to hear how it went for you. But again, it's like quite expensive.
I know.
So, you know,
I'm the type of person who I'm like, if there's something that I can buy that is going to help me, I will spend the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Look,
even though I'm like, I'm never going to use it ever again.
Works
So,
it works. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And if it gets the job done, then it doesn't really matter how you got the job done. You just want to get the job done.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay, so you attended some childbirth education classes and in hindsight, you wish you'd learnt more about pushing techniques. What makes you say that out of interest? Did you find it difficult when you were in the...
Yeah, I was literally pushing for like 2 hours and then I was just like, I just cannot do it. So I ended up having forceps. So is this the part where we can talk about this?
Go for it. Let's go for it. Yeah.
So when it was time to push, I'd had an epidural and like I thought I knew because like I know like how to do Kegels and like all of that stuff. And I don't know if I was just like confused or like thought I knew what I was doing or if it was like misinformation or if I just had my wires crossed. But I was pushing for about 2 hours and I just like couldn't do it. And I mean, she was a big baby. She was 8.5 pounds. And but she was fine. Like I think it would have been more stressful if she was like in distress, obviously, but she was just chilling. My mum was there and obviously my partner Jono was there. It didn't feel like 2 hours of pushing, but I guess it was quite a long time. But I was exhausted and she was like right there. My mum was like, she's got so much hair, so you could like see the top of her head. And like she just kept going forward and then going back. So they did end up doing forceps, but it was just like the tiniest little, got the top of her head out and then I grabbed her the rest of the way and pulled her out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was
that was it.
Jump to the good part.
Yeah.
Can I ask, because again, I'm intrigued by all this, being the pelvic floor physio that I am, because I think there's multiple reasons why a baby might be having, like there might be difficulty with pushing. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily just because of your pelvic floor. But I would just love to know, with your pelvic floor, you'd been doing the perineal massage, but do you feel you had a good awareness of how to relax your pelvic floor?
I feel like no. I'm like thinking about it now and I'm like, I am thinking about it in the sense of like going to the bathroom, like, can you stop? Like if you were peeing, could you stop? Like if someone like burst in or like the phone rang or someone was at the door or something like that. So I'm like, I can like, yes, but I don't think that's right now.
Interesting. So Simone, here, like I'm sure you're going to talk about all this with your physio, and this is where I teach perineal massage. And look, hindsight's a lovely thing. So Simone, I don't want you to think I should have done this, could have done this.
Oh, no.
Like I don't know, and I don't know your situation. It's just from this conversation. But the way I teach perineal massage is to do it lying down, because when we're standing, it's hard to relax the pelvic floor. Whereas when we're lying down, it's all about letting go of that active tension in your pelvic floor.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense? And if you could activate and like stop yourself with the flow of urine, you probably had really strong pelvic floor, which will help with your recovery, which is great. But probably something we could have, hindsight.
If I knew that, I would have laid down.
We should have had this conversation a few months ago.
I know, damn it. But I was thinking that perineal massage was more for your actual like skin. So I was looking at it as I don't want to tear. I didn't think that there was any like link in relaxing your pelvic floor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that might be silly for me because I did read like so much stuff.
Yeah.
But
hindsight.
I mean, I think this is just a classic case of all the gear and no idea. But
and we're all experts afterwards, you know what I mean? Like hindsight's a lovely thing. But with the whole perineal massage, it's only 5 minutes a couple of times a week from 36 weeks onwards. So when we think about it from a stretching perspective, really in 5 minutes, twice a week, you're not going to get any stretch per se. So the benefit with perineal massage, and this is why I like to call it perineal preparation, because it's not just about the physical massage. It's more of a mental thing and learning how to let go of that muscle tension.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I was doing it maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But again, I was just doing it more in a oh my gosh, I don't want to tear. I don't want to
Yeah.
tear.
Yeah. That's okay. Doesn't matter.
Didn't tear though.
You didn't tear. Amazing. And you had, with the forceps, did they do an episiotomy?
Nope. Yesterday when my daughter had her 6-week needles and I was talking to my GP about it and she was reading through everything and she was like, you didn't get an episiotomy? And I was like, no. And she was like, and you had forceps? I was like, yeah. And she was like, interesting. And so apparently that's an interesting fact. But yeah, she was right there. So it was like she was it was just like she just needed to be hugged that last little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have an episiotomy. I had one internal stitch that was, they said, a graze, but from the actual forcep itself. But I came out relatively unscathed.
Amazing. I'd love to know, and I know we've jumped a little bit ahead, but I'd also love to know, you mentioned you had an epidural. Was that something pre-planned or was that something that happened?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely pre-planned. My older sister, she is like a freak of nature when it comes to giving birth. Like she's had all of her kids in under 6 hours, and like her last baby, she went into started having contractions at 3 a.m. My mum went up to their house at about 5:45. She went to the hospital, and then her baby was out at 7 and she was home by lunchtime. So she's like one of those people who's just like in, out, no pain medication, like no pain relief. And it's just, freak of nature. But I have the worst pain threshold. And I know that. And I was just like, there's absolutely no way. Even like before I was pregnant, I was like terrified of not childbirth, but the pain. Like I'm just such a baby when it comes to that. So that was always my plan going in. And I was also like worried that I was going to miss that window of being able to have an epidural, them saying, oh, I'd go home and come back, and that I'd do that and then I'd miss it. Yeah. But everything kind of worked out the way that I had hoped, that my water actually broke first before I started having contractions. So when it did break, I had maybe 2 contractions in the hour, and then I went to the hospital, and it was like as soon as I set foot into the hospital, it was like on for young and old. Yeah. And I was like still in the triage of the birthing suite, and I was like, my contractions started coming every 3 to 5 minutes. And like I said, my pain threshold is so bad, I was like instantly throwing up. So that was like my body's physical reaction, that I could not stop vomiting for 2 hours, anytime I was having a contraction. So I was like, please. They came in and they were like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, if you send me home, I will not come back. And they were like, would you like an epidural now? Yes, please. So I was there for about 2 hours until I, from when I stepped foot into the hospital and got the epidural, was about 2 hours. Couldn't recommend it more. It was just what was going to work for me. There was, like I said, I'm such a sook, and there was just no way that I would be able to do it without it. So I was very grateful that I was in a good hospital. I was at Royal Women's Hospital in Randwick. I have had, this is going to sound like a horror story, but it's not. It was nothing to do with the epidural, but I actually technically have a spinal injury, but it's nothing to do with my spine. When I had my legs in stirrups, this is probably my other piece of advice. If you have your legs in stirrups, even though you can't feel them, I could tell that my legs weren't level. One was kind of out a funny way and the other one was not. And we kept trying to adjust it. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It does matter, because I now have a neuropraxia of the femoral nerve in my right leg. So I haven't been able to feel part of my right knee for the last 6 weeks, which is not something I thought I would be leaving the hospital with after having a baby, but could be worse. It doesn't hurt, and it's kind of basically already fixed, but I've been having to go and see neurologists and things. I've got to see them today, in fact, and I've got to do nerve testing. And it's just more the reflex from my right knee is completely gone.
Have you got full...
But they said...
Sorry.
They were just saying that it was most likely from my legs being in stirrups for 2 hours and like the nerve essentially being crushed in my right hip.
Yeah. And have you got full movement and strength, or is that also affected?
I've got full movement, nothing hurt, but I don't have full strength. So like when they took my epidural out and that was all fine, and the midwife came in to help me get up and have a shower, and I was like, oh, my leg's still dead. And she was like, well, we'll just wait an hour. And then she came back and I was like, I still cannot feel. I was like, I can't feel part of my leg. And I wasn't like scared or anything. I was just like, okay, like whatever, that happens. Like I've read so many things about like epidurals that I'm like, okay, that like is it's a possibility. And I'd always had like problems with this leg, well, this knee for playing basketball for years, and like this knee used to pop out. So originally they'd thought that maybe I had actually popped my kneecap out during birth while my legs were in stirrups and I just didn't feel it. But I was like, no, I'm sure that didn't happen, because like when I've done that in the past, like it actually like hurts and is swollen afterwards. But it's so weird because it's so isolated. Like I can feel exactly, like even when I was shaving my legs this morning, I'm like, it's the weirdest sensation because it just feels like it's like not part of my body. But it was kind of, so nothing hurt. It was affecting the way that I was walking because like, you know, when you step and you like bend your knee, if I bent that knee, it felt like my leg was just going to like completely like collapse underneath me. So I started like walking and like overcompensating, which was making my like lower back hurt and things like that. So the team of doctors and stuff have been really good following up. Like I've seen everybody. I've seen the anaesthetist. I've seen the actual doctors who were there when I gave birth, because the doctors all came in. It wasn't just the midwife, because I'd been pushing for 2 hours. And that's when about 3 doctors came in and they were like, we're going to either do an episiotomy and forceps or the vacuum. And I was like, no episiotomy. So yeah, I saw all the doctors that were there. Who else did I saw? Neurologists, everyone. It was kind of like that freak case that every time someone came into the hospital room, they're like, we've heard about you. And I was like, fantastic. Not good in a hospital when everyone's like, wow, we heard about this.
Oh, well, that's quite some story. It's the first time I've had that on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I'm like, when I left, I was like, this is not the injury I expected to be going home with.
Yeah.
Like I came in being able to walk perfectly fine, and now I'm leaving with like a dead leg. And they were just kind of like, we don't want to say when it's going to get better because it could get better in 2 weeks. It could get better in 2 months. And I'm like, cool, thanks.
Well, you seem quite relaxed about it, which is really cool.
Well, I'm just kind of like, it could be worse.
Yeah. And at least it doesn't hurt. Like that's
it doesn't hurt. These things happen. Yeah. So it is getting better, and I'm seeing a physio and all that. And it's mostly better now. I still can't feel part of it, but I still would have an epidural again. Like I still would not change anything about my delivery, maybe get my legs in the right spot. But otherwise I'm like, it was pretty drama-free.
Yeah.
I would rather my knee thing than an episiotomy.
And they never mentioned like a walking epidural, like a lighter dose.
I had heard about that, but I heard that they weren't as common in Australia.
They're not, unfortunately, yet.
Yeah, because I'd read about that and I was like, I would have liked that, but everything else that I'd like read and people that I spoke to didn't seem to be very common here.
Yeah. I think it's a growing area.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, so unexpected recovery in the early days. Talk us through how, like breastfeeding, like with the baby, all that with Gia. How's everything going there?
Breastfeeding is going really well. I've already had a very mild case of mastitis because she got home from the hospital and she was like sleeping through the night, which I wasn't thinking, okay, like I was like, oh, fantastic. I have a great little baby. So I'm just going to sleep, when I really should have probably gotten up and expressed. But again, she was only like 7 days old. I had no idea what I was doing. So, and I caught it really early, and it was more, they think it was more due to like nipple damage and an infection rather than actual blocked ducts. And it was only on one side, and I got onto it straight away. And that's when I started seeing the women's physio, because I went and I was doing ultrasound treatment on my breast, which I did about 3 sessions like consecutively, and just took Panadol like every few hours and was icing it and did the whole cabbage leaf thing, and that really took care of it. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad that I got it, if you're going to get it, that I got it early on in an extremely mild case, just so like I'm more aware and I know more about it and what to do and what not to do. So in that sense, I'm like, cool, that's under control. But I'd say overall, like I'm pretty like go with the flow. Like if it happens, it happens. We'll deal with it, with whatever it is. Yeah. And just, take it head on and just take it in your stride, I guess.
And that's lovely. That's totally the vibe I'm getting from you. You know, you've just these hurdles one at a time. You're just going for it, like feeling exhausted, the nerve stuff,
Yeah, everyone's asking me, they're like, oh, like, how are you going? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I'm tired, but I just, like, I've got a 6-week-old baby. So I'm like, what do you know, that's like, comes with the territory. So, yeah, I'm just kind of enjoying every minute. And most days I like tell myself, or if it's like the middle of the night, like I have a, like, I think I'm pretty lucky. She's a very good baby. She only really wakes up once at night. And then like she woke up last night at midnight and went back to sleep till about 6 o'clock this morning, and then went back to sleep till about 9. So she's a very sleepy little thing.
It's better than my 12, 10, no, 11, what are they? 11, 9 and 6-year-old. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's very relaxed. But yeah, I'm just like, this is the last day you're going to be this little. I always tell myself that, like, especially like if it's the middle of the night and it's just us up and I'm like feeding her, I'm like, okay, this is the last day you're ever going to be this small. I know that sounds super cheesy, but I'm like,
I love that.
I think that's none. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, this is what babies do. So I'm not like too phased by like if she does wake up or if she's unsettled, I'm like, okay, not your best night, but you'll have better. So
yeah, I love that. That's a really good mantra. I'm going to start saying that too, because even with my kids that are older, it's still the last day that they're going to be this little.
Yeah, I think it's really sweet.
Yeah. It helps to just ground yourself and just to reflect on the gratitude.
Yeah, that's fully what I think it is. And it's just like, okay, like it's like the same with the sleeping things. It's like, okay, you might have a bad night, but you'll have other better nights. So it's fine. It's okay.
I love that. So for any pregnant mums or new mums listening today, being a seasoned mother of a 6-week-old bubs, what advice, what parting words of wisdom would you like to share?
Well, I thought I'd mention, so recovery-wise, again, there's no like real, you hear about people doing the placenta tablets. So I did that, but I also had part of my placenta made into a smoothie, which I drank, which was actually really nice.
Okay.
Again,
wait, backpedal.
Do your own research and do your own reading about it. I'm not a doctor.
I haven't talked to anyone who's eaten their placenta. So take me through this process. What made you think you wanted to do it? How much research did you do? And then how did you actually go about it?
So my older sister's a freak of nature when she's given birth and she's had perfect recoveries. She never ate or drank hers, but she had placenta capsules made with her first baby because I took her placenta to the place. So I always knew that it was something that I would be like interested in doing, and like not related, but like years ago, I dealt with really bad, like chronic psoriasis, which is a skin condition over like 90% of my body for about like 2 years. I couldn't work or anything, which being a model was like detrimental for my career at the time. Um, so I've always been really big on like reading like all about different kind of like different herbs, treatments, studies, whatever that you can do. And so when I don't know, I've just always been kind of interested in that type of stuff. And like, I wouldn't say so much holistic, but like just different ways of kind of like healing your body. So I'd always knew about the placenta capsule things. I know there's so many people who are probably going to hear this, and like even my brother-in-law, he's like, that's a byproduct of birth. He's like, that's disgusting. There's no point, blah, blah. So do your own research. Again, I'm not a doctor, so do what works for you. But I read all the stuff, and I originally was just going to do the capsules. And then I read about having it made into a smoothie as well, and just all the positive things that you potentially could gain from that. So I did that. I paid for it, had all the forms and everything filled out and signed. Nobody else is allowed to have a sip of your smoothie. So not that they'd want to, but you can't share it.
So, okay. So how do you take your placenta home from hospital? Step one.
Well, I had a like sterile container and all the things that they said. And then I had all that ready to go, labeled with all the forms like on the container. And I'd mentioned to my midwife, I was like, oh, like I'm going to have them made into capsules. And they came and bought me like a sterilized like bucket with ice. So I texted the lady and I was like, I've gone into labor, blah, 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 which is like her process. You'd let her know. And then because I had an epidural and they were like, okay, you're going to probably start pushing in like an hour. I was like, cool. Texted her, and then they put it in a bucket and put it on ice, and she came and picked it up.
Oh, right.
And my partner, Dono, ran it downstairs to her car and she took it off. And then she came back a few hours later with like a protein type shakers container. So they only use a 3 centimeter piece, and they can't use it if it's had like what's it called? What's like the baby poop?
Oh, meconium.
Yeah, meconium. I was going to say mitochondria, and I'm like, no, that's not it. Yeah, so she took it and they put like a 3 centimeter piece in with coconut water, banana, and some frozen berries and blended it up, brought it back to me a few hours later. And it was actually really good. I've also eaten like a lot of really fucked up things, particularly when I'm a celebrity. So like I've eaten like tarantulas, spiders, I've eaten raw frogs, I've eaten eyeballs, I've eaten like impala brains and like all this crazy stuff. So I wasn't really phased, and it didn't taste like there was any. If you didn't know and you were like, oh yeah, have this drink, you'd be like, that was yum.
Did it have a metallic taste like iron?
Slightly, but like nothing that you'd be like, there's something weird in here.
Okay.
Like it didn't taste like organy, if you will. But I fully stopped bleeding within 7 days of giving birth. And I've got like a history of like, I have taken antidepressants before for about 2 years. So I've got a history of depression and anxiety. And I was so concerned about getting postpartum depression. So the reasoning for me wanting to do those things with my placenta was more because whether it was just like, you know, whether it was just like a placebo that it might not do anything, but it's going to make me feel like it's doing something. So yeah, it very much helped me. Again, do your own research. I'm sure there's going to be just as many people who say there's no scientific facts about that. I'm like, that may be so, but I maybe had like 2 or 3 days postpartum, like directly after she was born, of like tears and stuff. But otherwise, I've been pretty good. Yeah.
Do you know the history behind eating placentas? Like, how far back does it go? Like, what cultures did it?
It's lots of, I think it's big in like Chinese medicine and that type of stuff. And I know I know some cultures they like bury it. And she had like different options. Like you could have it like steamed with like Chinese herbs and stuff. Like that's before it's dehydrated and made into the pills. But I was more like, okay, if this is even again, if it is just like a mental placebo thing, that taking these tablets, they might not do anything. Yeah. But if it's going to make me feel like, okay, if I'm going to take this and it's not going to make me feel like I want to die post-birth and like get the baby blues and be terribly upset, I would do anything to not feel that way. So I'm like, I
love your open mind.
Yeah, treat it like if there's something I can do to like avoid something, which is like now that I'm thinking about it, saying it out loud, that seems to be the running theme through my whole pregnancy. If I can do perineal massage and eat a fuck ton of dates so I don't tear, fantastic. If I can take my placenta capsules and drink my placenta smoothie so I don't get postpartum depression, fantastic.
Love it. And you know what? If potential benefits, even if they're unresearched and it's not scientific, if they outweigh any negatives and cons, then
So far no negatives for me. I know most people are going to be like, that's insane. Why would you do that? But
okay, I want to hear anyone on Instagram or listening to this podcast, send us a DM. Let us know what you've done with your placenta. I know someone who got it made into a piece of artwork. So they somehow attached it to this canvas, not them, like it was professionally done. And it's been, I don't know what they use, like lacquer or whatever, but it's been made into this amazing piece of abstract. It looks abstract, like artwork.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know lots of people can like bury them like in their gardens and stuff or like plant them. I think that's like a New Zealand thing, but I could be wrong. But yeah, no, I know like I've heard stories of people planting them or like I know someone who has theirs in their freezer, for example. But each to their own. But yeah, absolutely. It definitely worked for me. And I was like stoked that I'd like stopped bleeding within 7 days because I was like, okay, I don't want to bleed for weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could have been many, many things like, but for me, I'm like, that's what did it.
That's right. It worked for you in your mind and that's all that counts.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Simone. It was a fun conversation. It was, I never know what's going to happen in these conversations. It's the best. And you said when we first started chatting, you said you only had a boring story to tell. But it hasn't been boring. It's been anything but. I've loved it. So thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
That's it, ladies. Before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Simone at fitnessmama.com/podcast. And also don't forget that free pregnancy workshop where you will learn how to prepare your pelvic floor for birth and boost your after-birth recovery. And that's at fitnessmama.com/free. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at fitnessmama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.